It's striking how a simple ceremony like that which takes place here this morning in the heart of London can exert such a hold on the nation's imagination. For over 90 years, the armistice of November the 11th, 1918, which ended the First World War, has been commemorated at the Cenotaph. Already on either side of the Cenotaph, the detachments representing the armed forces and the other services who are going to be on parade here are assembling. The household cavalry are here, the life guards. Familiar figures of the 1st Battalion, the Royal Gurkha Rifles. The Royal Marines are here. And then there's the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards. Led by the crossbearer, the children and gentlemen of the Chapel Royal come out to take their place by the Cenotaph, with the Sergeant of the Vestry, the Chaplain General to Her Majesty's Land Forces, and the Bishop of London, Dean of the Chapel Royal. In front of him, the Sub-Dean, William Scott. And smartly out of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Major General commanding the Household Division and London District, General Norton, who we saw a moment ago at the Field of Remembrance, and the Chief of Staff, Colonel Mathewson, and the aide-de-camp, Feller and Cuckoo. And they go down Whitehall towards the veterans, where they're standing waiting for the march past later. And next, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, leads the political group out. Nick Clegg on his right, the leader of the opposition, Ed Miliband, behind, you recognize. They turn to their left and line up with their wreaths. The Foreign and Commonwealth officer there, Gordon Brown, just briefly seen there, other ministers, and the Speaker of the House of Commons among them. Tony Blair among the former Prime Ministers, with Gordon Brown and Sir John Major. And then the Chiefs of Staff, General Sir David Richards, Chief of Defence Staff, Admiral Sir Mark Stanhope, First Sea Lord, the Chief of the General Staff, General Sir Peter Wall, the Chief of the Air Staff, Sir David Dallon, and the Merchant and Civilian Services. And they're followed by nearly 50 High Commissioners or representatives of the High Commissioners of various Commonwealth countries, ranging from the very largest countries, Australia and India and Canada, to the smallest, Fiji and Tonga and Malta. And most of them took a part, some of them a very large part, in both world wars and indeed in the wars since then. And they line up on three sides of the Cenotaph and will be followed by the religious denominations. Though this Cenotaph memorial is deliberately not a religious memorial, a large number of religious groups come here. Apart from the Church of England, which was represented by the Bishop of London, there are representatives of the Roman Catholic faith, the Jewish, the Buddhist, the Muslim, Hindus, Sikhs, Greek Orthodox, and other Christian churches, the Methodists, the Free Churches, the Unitarians, the Baptists, the United Reformed Church, and the Salvation Army are all here. On the balcony, members of the royal family watch. On the left there, the Duchess of Cornwall, and on the right, the new Duchess of Cambridge, Catherine Middleton, who this year married Prince William. The Countess of Wessex, married to Prince Edward beside her, and Timothy Lawrence, married to the Princess Royal. They stand here and observe. There are now 2 minutes, or just a little less, until 11 o'clock and the 2 minutes silence. The parade is brought to attention and we await the arrival of the royal party led by the Queen. The Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, the Prince of Wales, Princess Royal, the Duke of York, the Earl of Wessex are there, and the Duke of Kent. And they take up a special position right in front of the cenotaph, from where, after the 2 minutes silence, they will lay their wreaths. As 11 o'clock strikes, the Royal Horse Artillery will fire 1 round of a gun at the beginning and then at the end of the 2 minutes. Her Majesty the Queen will now lay her wreath, the first of those laid by the royal party. And the Duke of Edinburgh. Next, on his 90th birthday this year, he was given the title Lord High Admiral, a title from the Middle Ages, used to command the Navy. Now that's in the hands of the Admiralty Board. 70 years ago, the Duke was mentioned in dispatches for an action aboard HMS Valiant off the Greek coast. He's followed by the Prince of Wales in the uniform of a general in the army. He's been much involved this year in visiting injured soldiers and acting as a patron of a number of service charities as well. His wreath with the Prince of Wales feathers on it. And next, Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, a search and rescue pilot in Wales at the moment, due to go to the Falklands next year on service. And he's followed by Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, who was a helicopter pilot, served in the Falklands War, is Colonel-in-Chief of a number of regiments and Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air Arm. And the Earl of Wessex in the uniform of an honorary colonel of the Royal Wessex Yeomanry. He'll be followed by the Princess Royal in the uniform of a Vice Admiral. She's Colonel-in-Chief of a number of regiments. Last month, she was at the ceremony where Wootton Bassett was renamed Royal Wootton Bassett in honor of all those dead who they had welcomed home as heroes. And last in the royal party, the Duke of Kent, who visited Afghanistan this September. He served 21 years in the Royal Scots Greys, and his father was killed on active service in the Second World War. After the royal wreaths have been laid in silence, the band now plays Beethoven's Funeral March, and the politicians will take their turn laying wreaths at the foot of the cenotaph, led by the Prime Minister David Cameron. The Deputy Prime Minister, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Nick Clegg. leader of the opposition, leader of the Labour Party, Ed Miliband. From Northern Ireland, the deputy leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Nigel Dodds. And next, representing the Scottish National Party and Plaid Cymru at Westminster, Angus Robertson. And finally, of the political party, the Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, William Hague. He lays a special wreath on behalf of the overseas territories, made not of poppies, but of exotic flowers which represent those overseas territories. It's specially made up at Kew. And next, the turn of the High Commissioners, starting with the old senior members of the Commonwealth: Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Ghana and Malaysia are there. Canada fought in World War I and II, of course, with great distinction at the Battle of Ypres, in particular at Juno Beach on D-Day. Australians, who are active in Afghanistan now, who lost over 60,000 in World War II, suffered the highest casualty rate of any nation in World War I. The Indian subcontinent sent 2.5 million volunteers to World War II. So those wreaths are laid on behalf of all those countries. And then followed from the south side by the High Commissioners of Nigeria and Cyprus, Sierra Leone and Tanzania, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Uganda, Kenya, and Malawi. In the next group, Malta, the George Cross Island, awarded the George Cross for its courage in resisting German bombing during the Second World War. And Zambia, the Gambia, Singapore, where many people here were held prisoners after the fall of that great city by the Japanese, Guyana, Botswana, Lesotho, Barbados, and Mauritius. And now Swaziland and Tonga, Fiji, Bangladesh, the Bahamas, Grenada, Papua New Guinea, the Seychelles, the Commonwealth of Dominica, and the little island of St. Lucia in the Caribbean. And as the last group prepares to come forward, there is one country missing, whose citizens fought in both world wars, and that is Zimbabwe, now expelled from the Commonwealth, the former Southern Rhodesia. Many people here will remember the service that they gave, particularly in the Second World War, many in the Royal Air Force. Here in this contingent, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Belize, Antigua and Barbuda, the Maldives, St. Christopher and Nevis, Brunei, Dar es Salaam, Namibia, Cameroon, Mozambique, and Rwanda. And once the High Commissioners have returned to their place, it's the turn of the service chiefs. Not the Chief of Defence Staff, General Sir David Richards, who stands behind but doesn't take a wreath, but Admiral Sir Mark Stanhope for the Royal Navy, General Sir Peter Wall in the centre there for the Army, and Air Chief Marshal Sir Stephen Dalton. And they're followed by representatives of the Merchant Navy and fishing fleets, the Air Transport Auxiliary Service and the civilian services. David Hill for the Merchant Navy, Derek Smith for the Air Transport Auxiliary Service, and Sir Dennis O'Connor, Her Majesty Chief Inspector of Constabulary for the civilian services. And next, the short service led by the Bishop of London.